What is up, you remember royalty? I'm Ace Explains and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about gender modality. So what gender modality is it is defined as the correspondence, or lack thereof, with somebody's assigned gender at birth and their gender identity. So basically, it is describing the relationship between those two things. And the most commonly known ones are cisgender and transgender. So cisgender is where you identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, and transgender is where you don't identify with the gender you were assigned at birth. But these are not the only two gender modalities. There are a ton that include a ton of different people, so I'm going to be describing some of those today. And since there are so many, I'm not going to be able to get through all of them in this video, so if you want another video with me explaining the other types, please let me know, and let's just get into it. So the first or next one is Centergender. So Centergender is where somebody does not identify with being cis or trans. So they either don't identify fully or at all with cis or trans. They feel that their gender is either just none of those, or maybe somewhat part of those, or just somewhere in between. So for Centergender, it can be used as like an umbrella term, or it can be used as a gender identity in itself. And anybody can be Centergender as long as they don't fully identify with being cisgender. And underneath that, there can be center cis or center trans, where somebody, although they don't fully identify with cis or trans, they partially identify with it. So adgender is where somebody moves towards like a certain presentation of their gender or just a certain gender in general. So this one has a few subcategories. So somebody can be feminine, which means that they move towards being like feminine or femininity. And there's also masculine, which would be that, just masculine, neutral, and androgynous. So basically for all of these, they don't identify with being trans or cis, but they move towards a certain gender or gender expression or gender presentation. And for adgender, it includes people that are trans or people that are not trans but actually do like transition. And to be adgender, you don't actually have to identify with the trans experience at all, which is different from sensgender. So sensgender is where somebody partially relates to the trans experience. And to kind of give you an idea of what that means, basically think of somebody that is gender fluid. For somebody that is gender fluid, they may one time feel like they're male, another time feel that they're female. And so because they're kind of fluidly going through this different gender experience, it makes them, in a way, feeling like they feel the trans experience, which would fit into this category of sensgender. So isogender, which can sometimes be confused with centergender, is again where somebody doesn't identify with being trans or cis, but different from centergender, where they are like sometimes in between. For isogender, a lot of the times, the reason somebody does not identify with being trans or cis is because they actually don't have a gender, so they're like genderless. Or maybe they're non-binary and they feel like they are more feminine or more masculine, and that kind of identifies more with their assigned gender at birth. Or somebody might be bigender but present themselves more in the way with the gender that they were assigned at birth, which makes them feel like they do not have the trans or the cis experience. So that's what makes isogender different from centergender. So the next one is metagender, which is similar to isogender or centergender, where they don't identify with being trans or cis. And for metagender, it has a lot of different definitions. It's had many over the years. And now a lot of times people refer to it as a gender modality that is just not trans and not cis. But sometimes it can be used in a spiritual way, where somebody is transcending their gender, basically how they just don't fit into the gender roles. So there are a ton of different definitions for metagender, and you could totally look it up to see all the different definitions and see if any of those click with you. The last one I'm going to cover today is Utrinquegender, and this is a gender where somebody identifies with both the trans and the cis experiences. So those are all the gender modalities I have for you today. Hopefully you learned something, and if you have any questions or any suggestions, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.